Call the meeting to order. Can I have the Boy Scouts come up here? We're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance. You guys can help us out. Would that be all right? Just come up here to the front. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I invite you to join us. Just come right here. I'm going to show these guys how to do it, okay? Are we ready? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good job, guys.
Commissioner Pipcorn's going to ask you some questions about the history of the United States. Go ahead, Dave. No. Roll call, please.
Gehrig. Grinberg.
Here.
Pepcorn.
Here.
Strand.
Here.
Mahoney.
Here. Gehrig is in flight right now in his training, so he was unable to join us. He just wanted us to know that we all can sleep a little better at night knowing he's out in New York doing that right now. So, Health Department. Ken Tinquist and Chris Ullman have passed the Registered Environmental Health Specialist exam administered by the National Environmental Health Association. This nationally recognized exam covers a broad spectrum of environmental and safety topics in order to advance the career of environmental health practitioners. By obtaining this credential, Ken and Chris have expanded their knowledge and are now considered expert in the field of environmental health. And if you want to ask them any questions about the environment, Desi, they just call over there, right? Okay. Inspections. Christine Rose, Inspectors Department Deputy Administrator, received the Gerald Jones Code Official of the Year Award from the International Code Council during the ICC Annual Member Luncheon last week. Everybody's getting awards. Is it going up? Pretty good, huh? Library. November is the Native American Heritage Month, and the library is hosting a festival and educational series, including the screening of a documentary about how Native Americans have been portrayed in films. Upcoming programs at the library include the American Sign Language Story Times, craft afternoons, yoga, a basic cooking class, paper beads craft, and a recycling event for the children. Planning has been busy as well. The city issued building permits worth $405 million in the first 10 months of 2018, up 10% from the $367 million issued during the same period last year. Permits were issued for $56 million in new commercial projects, $72 million for commercial remodeling, $50 million for public projects, 898 new multifamily housing units, and 254 single-family houses. So we're getting some, John, making some progress. Police. The City of Fargo Community Trust officers and the hip-hop group DPB and the crew recently premiered their second music video, It's Time, which features local men, women, children, as well as Governor Doug Burgum and his wife Catherine, railroad workers, Senator Heidkamp, staff of WDAY and KVLY, Cass County Sheriff candidate Jesse Janner, and nurses from Sanford and Essentia Health. The goal of the CTO program is to maintain and improve the quality of life within neighborhoods through positive interaction, communication, and education. They continue to look pretty good, but Chief Todd still does not dance the hop too well. He did the sprinkler the other night, but he couldn't do anything else for us. The police department's No Shave November fundraiser is off to a great start. This year's fundraiser will support Sergeant Mark Lucan's family and their son Adam, who is battling cancer. So far, the department has raised nearly $6,000. What's that, $100 for a beard, or how do you do that?
Yep, $100 for a beard and $25 for a
Oh, my goodness, okay. Solid Waste. Solid Waste is partnering with Minn Kota Recycling through November to promote the Cans for Cash City of Fargo Recycling Challenge. Minn Kota will pay 1 cent per pound match this month on all aluminum cans collected for the Minn Kota Redemption Center and the City of Fargo Recycling drop sites. This 1 cent match proceeds from the aluminum cans will benefit Got No Milk program for our public schools, which provides milk for elementary schools at mid-morning snacks for free. We have a celebrity on the commission tonight. Commissioner John Strand is attending the National Leagues of Cities convention later this week in Los Angeles and will be on a panel and a workshop addressing addiction in small cities. Topics to be discussed at the workshop include opportunities to exist in small cities to address addiction, including public health responses, pre-arrest diversion, resources to address large-scale challenges, and what role city leaders play in traction to get other elected officials and community members to prioritize addressing addiction. And John, we've made some progress in the community.
We have a really good story to tell others, and they will learn from what we've done here. So I'm looking forward to it.
And then today we had the announcement that UPS is coming to town, the Airport Authority. Where I was out there with Sean Oberstein, and we went through a new UPS facilities coming into town after 26 years of trying to get them to come here. Is that right? And that allowed new employees and new staff and the capability within the community. They have a flight in and a flight out. It hours two or three more hours allowed on each end of that to get your package out there and get it delivered anywhere in the world. And we're real excited about that. That's a big boon for our city. That's something we're real proud of. So thank you, Tammy, and all the other members of the Airport Authority. Is there a motion to approve the order of the agenda, moving items 16, 19, 29 from the consent agenda to the regular agenda, and adding an additional item to the end of the regular agenda in considering an agreement with NDOT for federal aid highway project?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the October 22nd, 2018 regular meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Seconded. Any changes in the minutes? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion cast. And is there a motion to approve the consent agenda items 1 through 34, excluding items 16, 19, 29, to move to the regular agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Strand,
Yes.
Grinberg.
Aye.
Pepcorn.
Aye.
Mahoney.
Aye. Start the regular agenda. Chief Steve Dirksen just had a press release over at the Fire Department Station 1. And finally, Chief has been working on this for 20 years as well to get us to this level. And we're really excited about this because for most homeowners, Commissioner Gehrig is always concerned about if you buy your wife a dinner at night, but this probably allowed you to have breakfast in the morning. Probably saves all you on the homeowners policies a bit of money because now we're class 1, which means a better fire response to a fire in our community. So that should help every homeowner to save a little bit on their premium. And the secondary thing they do is our firefighters run to a fire. Is that right? You guys run? You're faster or something like that? The other interesting thing is that Chief will talk about it a bit, but it's also our water and the purity of our water and how good our water is set up. And all the commissioners know how much money we spent on water in the last several years.
It's wet, right?
Yes.
Wet.
And how well that has worked for us, but that helps it and also our dispatch center. So it's really exciting to see this community come up to a class 1 rating. So Chief, go ahead.
Well, good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. It's exciting for me to be here tonight. This is something that I never thought would happen in my career. I didn't think we'd get to this point. We've worked hard over the last few years. ISO has been around, Insurance Service Office has been around for many years, and they provide a rating system for communities to help set insurance rates throughout communities based on this rating. And when I arrived in town here 7 years ago, we were an ISO Class 3. And in 2013, we had an evaluation that came through, and we worked through that, and we got to an ISO Class 2 pretty solidly in the 2 category, and thinking, boy, this is really good. This is something that we strove for, and we got to. And then they called and said, well, we're ready to do a rating again. They've changed their practices. They used to do it every 10 years. Now they're working to do it every 5 years so that it's a more current operation and more current rating for a community. So they came this last April, and we went through their process, filled out all the paperwork, submitted it all, and then about a month or so ago, I got a phone call from ISO, said that they'd like to schedule a visit and come and talk to us about our rating. And today, they showed us that Fargo is now an ISO Class 1 community. We have reached an elite group of fire departments in our country. There's approximately 46,000, 48,000 fire departments that get evaluated, fire districts that are evaluated by ISO, and we are one of 329 fire departments to have a Class 1 rating. So that's less than 0.5% of fire departments that are rated at a Class 1. So that's outstanding work, number one, by our folks over at the fire department, but like the mayor had alluded to, it's not just the fire department. It's the work of the water department. It's the work of the dispatch center. Our water department, the gentleman that was here from ISO said he doesn't normally see scores like that from the water department, and that's because in our planning processes, we put fire hydrants at regular intervals throughout our community. We size our mains correctly. We have some future thought into how big to have those lines going forward so that we don't run into problems, so that we have the needed fire flow wherever we need it in the community. The ISO, again, with their process, they allow us to go through and evaluate us. And some of the things that they look at is the training that our department has. These guys out here are mostly our command staff, and they oversee the day-to-day operations, and they ensure our firefighters, each and every one, has a minimum of 240 fire suppression training hours a year. Now think of that on top of 11,000 responses a year, plus all the fire inspections that we do where we got extra points in our ISO rating, plus all of the fire hydrants that we flush, and the other things that we do, the public education and things that we do throughout our community. That's what got us to this ISO rating. So it's those folks. It's a huge boon to our water department and the maintenance that they do as well, and to our dispatch center. Our dispatch center got 9 out of 10 points, which they did very well. And the one thing I did want to point out too, all that maintenance that the fire department does on our side, as well as the dispatch center and the water department, is done in-house. We don't farm anything out for that maintenance. It's either taken care of by firefighters or by our central garage. So it's a team effort. We're all working really hard together to get that. The only thing that I think we farm out is our aerial ladder testing, and that's getting done this week because we just don't have the equipment to do that or the expertise. And we want that stuff to make sure that it's done well and properly there as well. But I wanted to just show you a couple slides here. Countrywide, this is the classifications that are out there. So you can see that we're part of 329 fire departments. In the state of North Dakota, we're one of 2 fire departments that are a Class 1 department. Our Fargo and Grand Forks are the only Class 1 fire departments within North Dakota, but you can see we're making improvement across our state each and every year as well, working forward with that. Minnesota, there's not a Class 1 fire department. I found that as an interesting fact. South Dakota has just 1 Class 1 fire department, and that's down in Sioux Falls. Montana, another bordering state, has no Class 1 fire departments. So you can see we're an elite group, and we're even in a little bit higher of an elite group because we are an accredited fire department as well as being a Class 1 now. And that puts us in a group of 72 fire departments that are an ISO Class 1 and an accredited fire department. I'll just read a couple cities that are in that list of that 70 that you might recognize. Houston Fire Department, we're in the same category as them. Denver, Atlanta, West Metro, Colorado, Plano, Texas, Chandler, Arizona, Overland Park, Kansas, Sioux Falls, South Dakota, Frisco, Texas, Olathe Fire Department. And I had the opportunity this last year to meet the mayor of Frisco and the fire chief down there at the accreditation, and I welcomed them to the dais. When they came up to present to us at the accreditation, I said, well, welcome Fargo South. Or as we call for 1 week a year anyway. Sioux City Fire Department is there as well, and Lenexa, Kansas. Those are the categories of communities that we are on par with, those 72 communities. So it's with great pride that we get to say to you that it's not just a fire department function that we're a Class 1 community, but it's a whole department. It's our central garage, it's our water department, it's our police department, it's our dispatch center. We all play and we pull in this together. And I just wanted to give a little historical reference for you as well and show you what this means for our community. Now, the mayor alluded to that hopefully we'll see some insurance reductions in that. And that's where we have to challenge the community, that when you meet with your insurance agents on a regular basis to review your coverage, you need to go out and say, they're not automatically just going to give you that better coverage. You need to say, hey, I hear we're a Class 1 fire department. Ask for that. How does that help my ratings? Because we put the things in place, and statistics show that when you have a Class 1 or a Class 2 fire department or a fire protection classification, that fire loss is less. And you can see in our community over the last 7 years where we are. We've gone a high of 2.7 million down to as low as 887,000 in fire loss, but we're kind of staying right at that, averages out at about $2 million in loss a year. And for a
But the only
community our
thing about
size-
this, chief, that doesn't reflect is the growth the city has had as well. So all these, although you have these losses that our value has gone up in the community, and so you have a lot bigger community size, commercial, everything in the town that's going up.
Absolutely. There's more structures, there's more people that we're dealing with, and one of the next things that I want to do when I get some time to look at it is take a look at that over time. What does this really mean in dollars from like 1987 to 2017? I think you'll see that, you know, we're raising the bar each and every day, and these folks out here, it's the credit to them. They're the ones that are doing it. I just get the great fortune of being the fire chief and saying, hey, good job, guys and gals, and keep up the good work. So with that, you know, we do want folks to say, you know, to go to their insurance agents and say, hey, we know we've got a top-class fire department because they have low fire loss. And we encourage people to go out, and if they have any questions about the public protection classification that we have, or anything about the fire department, the water department, the dispatch center, we'd be happy to share it with them. But congratulations, Fargo, and we're glad, and I'm happy to be able to stand in front of you tonight and say we're a Class 1 fire protection community. So, thank you.
Thank you very much, Dave.
Mr. Chair, could you have everybody, all the firefighters stand up? And I think we should give them a round.
Dispatch Center, Fire Department, Troy, stand up as well. Thank you for all you do.
Yep, thanks.
Appreciate it. Item 36, second reading and final adoption of ordinance amending sections 81009 and Article 810 of Chapter 8 of Fargo Municipal Code relating to parking regulations. First reading 10/10/18, delayed by 10/22/18 regular meeting. It says Nancy's going to explain this as well, Gordon? Or
Well,
Chairman?
Gordon isn't here today, so
Oh,
I'm at...
Nancy Morris to explain.
Yes, and the letter I presented to you for the agenda today is attached to it a map that indicates again the expanded area. So this was brought to you on receive and file and first reading several times a couple weeks ago, and it was delayed from the last hearing so that you could give further consideration to the area that was being added to the agenda. It is correct. So the area was going to be east of 4th Street, and now it will go also west of 4th Street to 5th Street and 12th Avenue, so that it includes the area to the east of 4th Street, and it's the 4th Street parking restrictions that are being changed.
And the neighbors in the area are okay with this now?
They
Is that correct?
requested that addition so that people that are west of 4th Street would have an opportunity to benefit from the change in the winter parking so that they didn't have to walk a further block, particularly in the evenings.
Any questions of Nancy? So it's not a public hearing, it's just we can take it now and just vote on it, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, can I have a motion, please?
I so move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Grinberg?
Aye.
Strand?
Yes.
Mahoney?
Aye. Go to public hearings, 37A, continue to 11/19/18, hearing on dangerous building located at 826 10th Street North. Is there a motion to continue the hearing?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call vote.
Grinberg?
Aye.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Strand?
Yes.
Mahoney?
Aye. Item B, renewal plans for district numbers 201801, 201802, 201803 for demolition of existing structures, site cleanup, public works improvements, and redevelopment of multifamily housing blocks 2, 3, and 19 of Birdsley Addition, continued from the 10/22/18 regular meeting. Jim Gilmore to explain.
Yes, in July, the City Commission approved a request from Roars Development to develop renewal plans for several blocks in the Roosevelt neighborhood. They've been acquiring properties on these blocks with the intent to redevelop them consistent with the University mixed use or other zoning districts. We looked at 4 blocks at that time. We've just prepared 3 plans at this point. The block that has the Newman Center on it that's still under review by the Planning Commission, we have not yet prepared a renewal plan on that one until we know the outcome of the zoning. The renewal plans can provide a description of the area. They document that there are blighted conditions, and the plans essentially encourage the developer to remove these structures as soon as possible. Unlike most renewal plans, we are not creating a tax increment financing district at this time. The plans note that we could do that in the future, but that would be a separate action of the City Commission. At this time, we don't know exactly what would be developed. We don't know what what financial need there may or may not be. And so what this does is really takes the first step, document that the conditions are blighted, document any demolition costs, and by adopting these plans, you could consider in the future reimbursement for those demolition costs or some other form of assistance. So any amendment to the plans that would actually do that would require a new public hearing, a new notice, and a development agreement. When you made the motion to go ahead and prepare these plans, you asked that I work with the Roosevelt Neighborhood Association. We provided a mailing to everyone within a block of each of these blocks that are that we have a renewal plan for. And I also met with some of the leadership of the Roosevelt Neighborhood Association. The Neighborhood Association was not as concerned because we weren't changing the zoning. This was already university mixed use. I received, I think, 4 phone calls on from people that own property in the area. 2 are from other landlords who said we should take into consideration what the vacancy rate is at the time that redevelopment occurs, and I made note of that in the plans that we should do that. One other call was just hoping we'd demolish a home that would happen to be across the street from here as soon as possible. Another just expressed concern over how the property has looked on the interim. So I think adoption of these plans will meet or address some of their concerns. The Planning Commission reviewed the renewal plans and determined that they're consistent with the GO 2030 comprehensive plan. And also, I just want to thank Aaron Nelson, who did the research and for this for these plans and put together all those maps. One of the things we did with this planning process was Roars provided the services of a drone, and this is just kind of a view of one of the blocks. This is block 19 of Beardsley's Edition. Just shows you kind of the context for the area. They own that house on the corner. Those first 2 homes are still occupied. The next 3 are in pretty poor condition, so those would be removed. I think they want to try to get about 5 of them removed this fall. If you look in the upper right, you'll see a home that's probably one of the ones that's in worse shape. It has holes in the roof. And
Commissioner Pickcorn, there's too many trees in the way.
No doubt.
It's hard to see them. The pictures in the packet are better.
If we're going to do this again, we'd probably do it early in the spring before all the leaves,
Yeah.
all the leaves come on. You can kind of see in the upper right-hand corner, there's that T-Lofts project. You can see, just barely see that building. So this is very close. This particular block is very close to the T-Lot and very walkable for students who might want to live on this particular block. Fire chief was just up there. You can see a burned out garage there. We don't want any more fires happening. We'd rather have these demolished than have them catch on fire. So I think,
So there's some houses in this area. It's not all the houses that are coming out.
right, just there's actually 5 on this, or 7 on this particular block. No, 5 on this particular block, and 4 on the other 2 blocks that would be demolished with this. And they would want to get several of them down this fall and get the others down next spring. Just as I think they're prepared to start demolition as early as within the next 2 weeks. I did drive by one of the sites today and noticed that there's already a backhoe in the front yard, so it looks like they're ready to get
Is there
going.
anyone present who wishes to speak to this renewal plan? Anyone present who wishes to speak? If not, we'll close the public hearing. Is there a motion?
Move for approval.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Discussion. Roll call vote, please.
Grinberg,
Aye.
Pepcorn.
Aye.
Strand.
Yes.
Mahoney.
Aye. Is application by Enclave Development LLC for a payment in lieu of tax exemption on a project located at 312 11th Street North, which the applicant will use in operation of a 60 to 70 housing units and amenity space, continued from the 8/27/18 and the 9/10/18 and the 10/8/18 regular meetings. I take it Jim Gilmore to explain. I have Ben
Yes.
Hushka down, but it's,
I'll take this one. Yeah, this is a request for payment in lieu of taxes, incentive to create or build a new housing project between 60 and 75 units would be located just west of the 300 Lime Building, which is at 303 12th Street North. This would be across the street at 312 11th Street North. Most of that half block is vacant. There are 2 homes that the developer does not own immediately north of that. This actually fits our current policy of providing a 100% property tax incentive for the first 5 years and a 75% property tax exemption for the second 5 years. When our tax exempt review committee reviewed it, they recommended approval but made it a condition on seeing whether or not it would meet a financial review or a but-for test. And so we did do that. That report is also attached, and our financial advisors feel that they did meet that requirement. The rate of return on this is about 7-point-some%. And so with that insistence, so the feeling was without the assistance, it would not be feasible. Right now on that vacant property, pays about $5,200 a year in property taxes. With this new building, at year 6, they would start to pay about $31,000 a year in property taxes. So we'd see an increase in taxes at year 6, and then by year 11, it would be about $120,000 to $130,000 in property taxes. So there would be a substantial boost in property taxes. Again, the property is vacant right now. The school district, we contacted both the school district and the county. The school district elected to participate in whatever exemption, if you choose to do that. The county this afternoon elected to only participate in the first 5 years. Austin Morris from Enclave is here. I'll have him come up and see if he has any comments, and he can answer any specific questions about the project.
Thank you, Austin Morris, Enclave Development. Just wanted to touch on a few things and answer any questions. This project next to 300 Lime that many of you guys are familiar with, that received a pilot without the but-for test prior to that, and we were happy to agree to have the city and PFM work together on coordinating that effort to see, I guess, what we see in downtown development. This project is bringing more additional market rate housing, which is one of the goals of the In Focus study. I wish you could see the tenant base, and I can't share too much about the tenant base at 300 Lime, but I wish that you could see who lives there, because it tells a lot about the project. When you look at 300 Lime, we have a large proportion of students. We have a large proportion of downtown employees, both in food service and bar industry, and then also in offices downtown. So we have a wide array of folks that want to and choose to live downtown, and I think they want more options. One of the most telling portions of that In Focus study was the goal to grow the housing base downtown to promote economic vitality and grow the economic base downtown. I found it interesting. I pulled the number of units pulled, and that's multifamily housing in the city year to date. And it's 889 units. Some of those units aren't rental, some are condo fraternal. But I found it kind of telling because we have 133 units pulled downtown, and that's probably one of the largest, from a proportionate standpoint, one of the largest time periods we've had that many units pulled downtown. You really only have a couple participants doing this work. It's challenging. It's really difficult to make any project financially feasible. Most of our projects out on the edge are more financially feasible, but because of our passion for downtown, our office is downtown, we believe in downtown long-term. I just think it's important to point that out because it's not like we're in a position where we have 10 developers all trying to develop the same piece of property. We really have an opportunity to encourage more development downtown. And I'd like to flip that number because right now, if we do 133 per year, we won't meet the goals of the InFocus study. That should be closer to 250. Our downtown occupancy rates have been extremely strong. We're providing housing, what I would consider the market rate based housing that many people can afford downtown with dutiful employment downtown. And I think that's important to consider when we look at, we consider affordable versus market rate and what those two markets serve, because they're different. So I just wanted to share those few tidbits, and if you guys have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Pepcorn?
So Austin, by receiving this pilot, would you say that's helping keep the rents lower?
I wouldn't say that. I would say it makes a project feasible that wouldn't otherwise be feasible. So downtown development's extremely challenging for a number of reasons, but one of the most challenging pieces is that in infill development in very tight sites, we have no area to do material handling. We have to work and figure that out, but we're also pushed to develop density in order to build a sufficient base of units and meet the downtown mixed-use standards. So we need to build high-quality housing with aesthetically dynamic facades downtown to preserve that vitality. We're not building our detached garage apartments, which do have a great market, and we've built almost 2,000 units of those. But we're not building detached garage apartments with mostly steel siding and a little stone at the entryway. We're elevated in the downtown area, which I think is good, but it is a challenge. When we want downtown, when you go down Broadway, when you go down First, Second, you want your built environment to look pretty nice because it is really the beacon from our city, from attractiveness, attracting people downtown, economic development. But you also need to make sure that we're developing areas that are appropriate for affordable housing and market rate alike. So that is kind of I would say, kind of a dichotomy, because it's difficult to build this type of housing downtown. It'd be even more difficult to build affordable housing downtown. I'd really like to, but the only way it works is with the 9% credits, and usually with a nonprofit partner. So I say it publicly. If I don't build an affordable housing project downtown in the next 5 years, I did something wrong because I've been trying to figure it out for a number of years. The non-competitive 4% credits don't work. I can't get it to produce anything but a negative. So I would say we're going to have both. It's just a matter of what mix is right for both. And I'd also like to mix them. So I'd like to have an interaction of uses downtown that have affordable nearby market rate, or even long-term, if the market supports it in a number of years, is actually mix the uses within a building. That's challenging even in Twin Cities. But there is a mix of both that I think our city will see downtown as things progress.
Just two more quick ones.
Fine.
First of all, our rules, our construction and planning rules, were they inhibiting to you at all? That's one. And then how about parking? How, like for your Lime, does everybody have a car, and are you providing enough parking? Or tell me about that a little bit.
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, I would say the overlay requirements for the exterior facade are much higher than what you'd have in the suburban area. They do elevate you to an arena where not only do you already have underground parking in order to make the density work, but you have underground parking, then you have a really nice facade, then you're hiding, either if you have air conditioners, which we can't, then you're doing central air. So you're elevating it a little bit where you're targeting, I would say, a market rate renter. And I wish I could like share the data because it's really interesting. Our income levels at 300 Lime aren't high. I mean, they'd be from here to here and everything in between. So it is kind of interesting because it's easy to look at these projects and go, that's an expensive property. Those are expensive rents. But we have 2 bedrooms where people share units. So we have roommates paying $650 a month each. We have 3 bedrooms where you have 3 roommates. You have 3 roommates paying $450, $550 each. You have efficiencies that are $900. Well, that's likely a single person or a couple, but usually a single person that has an income somewhere around that 35, 45 grand a year range. So they're falling where they're not spending more than 30, 35% of their income on rent. So it's actually, I'm going to try and figure out a way where I can share more data without sharing any specific information, because I think it would be pretty interesting
But
for you guys
Austin,
to
you're
think
seeing
about.
the other elements of your rent as far as cable, garage, right?
Yep.
There's some things that come with your rent that they don't pay an additional that you would in a bigger city.
Yep, once we do this, like 300 Lime, heat, air conditioning paid, cable internet paid, parking free or included. So if you were to add that up, if you were to rent elsewhere, even at a property built 10, 15 years ago, you might be at $625 a month for an efficiency, but you pay $75 for parking, you pay $65 for cable and internet, and you don't get a dog run, you don't get bike storage, and you don't get some of these amenities that are embedded in the rent level. So,
Mr. Greenberg?
Austin, you had mentioned it. Can you be a little more specific on what % of 300 Lime are students?
if I knew, I would tell you, but it's at least 20%.
20?
Mm-hmm.
I have another comment, but just as a side note, I was on a panel last week at NDSU with a few folks, and it was the honors program, honor students at NDSU, and funded by the Bush Foundation on topics of general interest of students. And the topic last week was the river that divides us in our philosophies between Fargo and Moorhead, and 30-some students in the audience. And I was taken back by the consistent response to the question, why did you choose, in this case, NDSU, students from outside the state of North Dakota? And their consistent answer was affordable housing is why they decided to go to college in Fargo.
Yep.
And I just would have not expected, that answer, quite honestly. And so I dovetail that into a question that I had with one of the members of the Special Assessments Task Force about the use of incentives and the affordable housing debate. In your analysis, have you talk about all the amenities.
Yep.
If you didn't have the incentives and the but-for test, if some of the amenities were taken out of it, less cost, would it still cash flow from a standpoint of a marketable property compared to, a apartment owner that has a 30-year-old project that has to reinvest without incentives to remain competitive in a quality environment and a scale? Can you comment just on that?
Yeah, that's challenging because when you get in urban environments and when you get in really dense projects, you attract a certain type of renter who expects amenities versus a building with nothing. And I would say the community aspect, that the reason people live downtown is for community, whether that be visiting coffee shops, going to bars, hanging out with friends within that community. But also, I don't think I've ever seen I can't think of any new multifamily projects without clubhouse amenities of some kind. This one, because it's less units, 67, we'll have to pare it down naturally just because we have to hit a certain price point in order to attract rentership. So I would say it's possible, but the price difference between adding amenities and not, from a proportion of cost, that isn't the biggest cost that we're adding. If you look at 300 Lyman, we actually bared down to what the cost of those amenities were as a proportion of the overall cost. It's probably 5 to 7%, whereas underground parking at 15 to 20,000 per stall, central air at 5,000 per unit, and some of those other costs, Facade, 500,000. I would say more of the features that are almost just innate requirements of developing downtown are drivers of cost compared to suburban environments where we have all this land to work with. I don't have development constraints on a tight site, and I can really do what we'd like. So,
Thank you for that. Just more kind of a philosophical question, as
Yeah.
well as a pragmatic.
but I would say young people, especially when they see projects, if they could choose an amenity-driven lifestyle versus not, they're probably willing to pay 75 to 100 bucks a month for that. And people use the community space. That's what's exciting is when I go there, it's always used. And I don't care what time of day. It's pretty interesting. You have different work schedules and everything. They're used because you have people yearning for community, and also you have people that want to be in a place where they can see people even if they're on their iPhone searching on Facebook for 6 hours.
Commissioner Strand, did you have a question?
I do, thank you. If I look at $895 to $1,850 for
John, could you move the mic closer to you?
if I look at $895 to $1,850 for rent, I kind of like get a deer in headlights look. Like that seems daunting. Is that really what the market is in Fargo?
In downtown Fargo, and maybe one thing that would be helpful is comparing also suburban rents, because I think also over the past 10, 15 years, rents have gone up naturally, whether it's an old product or a new product. But if we're building a suburban project with detached garages, and it's just more affordable by nature, our efficiencies are anywhere from 725 to 785. Our one bedrooms are 825 to 875. Our two bedrooms are 1,000 to 1040, and our three bedrooms are around that 1,400 range. What we found on the larger units, like a three bedroom, they're roommate situations, 9 times out of 10, and you can't build very many of them because you won't have enough parking. So you end up in 300 Lime, for instance, 2 3-bedrooms in the entire building, and you end up having that same challenge in any other developments downtown is, one, efficiencies sell well, 1-bedrooms sell well, lots of them are single dwellers. 2, you don't have many 3-bedrooms downtown. So if I looked at a comp set, in downtown, we might have 50 3-bedroom apartments in all of downtown, and that's anecdotal. I value accuracy, so don't take that to heart. But, and then you have 1,000 1-bedrooms. I mean, the ratio is so far off that we do get more rent for 3-bedrooms as a result of roommate and lack of supply.
And if I might continue, as I'm reading this information, with the public assistance, you'd be approximately getting a 7.72% profitability rate. Do you have that calculated? I see that it would be 1.3, almost 1.4 million less for the whole project without public assistance, or 13% less. Have you broken that down to, I mean, you say it's not doable?
Yep. Yeah, so what I shared with PFM, they run their own analysis separate.
Okay.
So what you get is what I would consider their best guess at an internal rate of return over a period of time, and they use 10 years. I wish they used 11, because year 11 is when taxes kick in full bore at 160,000. I think that number would be very different. But on an annual basis, my projections over a 10-year period are closer to 5% return on your cash. And the only way you're able to capture any additional rate of return is by selling the project or by refinancing at some point, because you're paying down principal. So maybe Jim can touch on how their analysis works.
Yeah, how that analysis works is they run some sensitivity analysis and say, well, how much less would this building have to cost in order for them to not need the assistance? And also then another, how much more would they have to get in rent in order for this to be feasible? And so when they looked at each of those scenarios and they looked at actual costs in the market, they determined that it's just not reasonable that you could cut 1.4 million out of the budget, and it's not reasonable you could get that much more in rent. And so they just try to give us a sense for how much less it would have to cost or how much more the rents would be. As sort of an extra check to see that they need the assistance.
And Mayor, one last question. If I recall, 300 Lime, by the way, these are great projects. You know,
Thank you.
I don't want anybody to think they aren't great
Yep.
projects. My concern is whether or not I can, in my own mind, rationalize public assistance
Yep.
for market rate projects like this. So we're clear on that. But there was an issue with the elevation of the height of the garages, the basement, and we had to do a variance, if I recall, afterwards because it was below the acceptable flood elevation level for 300 Lime because it was already under construction.
Yep.
Is this project going to be at the higher acceptable level for flood elevation?
Well, I think since then they may have changed that. I'm not sure. Do you recall? We got a variance for base flood elevation because we were within inches of it. I'd have to ask the engineering staff, but I believe since that project, a number of projects have gotten approved for that same variance. Because the challenge was even during a flood event, the only thing it would flood is uninhabitable property. And then the other challenge was, I want to say, with the surrounding properties, everything in Fargo would have been flooded except for ours. So we would have been an island, but I don't recall where that's
Yeah.
at with engineering.
Yeah, I think 300 Lime was just barely too low and needed to go higher, and, 220 West across the street was just fine, and I don't know that he's done the engineering yet to know where this one's going to fall, but so, can't tell you, I don't think he can tell you today, or engineering can say today whether or not the variance is needed.
Brenda's slowly coming up. She's getting older, I guess. I hear he gave Grinberg an autograph.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. Anyway,
Do you want us to repeat the question?
no, please don't. I was just visiting with Jody, kind of catching up, and we have not changed any of our requirements as of to date. So if they do not build to the 41 plus 2, 1.2, oh yeah, 41 plus 1.2, then they would have to acquire some sort of variance again.
Okay.
And my question is, do we expect that may happen or not? Or we don't know yet?
Well, we would expect that they should be building to the 41 plus
Exactly,
1.2.
but if they don't-
We would have to see, so there's been no evaluation of where the curb elevations are and what the layout of their facility is. So for us in engineering, there is no plan that we've been able to look at to evaluate whether they could or could not get to that elevation.
Austin, is it your sense that your expectation is to have that elevation up to the standard that the city has set?
I would say that we'd do everything possible to meet it, short of spending $500,000 on something that may or may not be necessary. But when we do, obviously, civil engineering work, we work with the city. We've used Houston in the past, and Brian Pattengale's been really good with working with the city on those things, but I'm not sure on this one yet.
Okay, thank you.
Is there anyone present from the public who'd like to speak to this project? Anyone present who wishes to speak? Thank you, Austin.
Thank you.
The question on the elevation and such is actually when the plans come out, and that'll be discussed at that time. Tonight's the only question of the pilot, right? Okay. Any other discussion by the commission? Do I have a motion?
I'll move.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Questions? Roll call vote, please.
Pepcorn.
Aye.
Grinberg.
Aye.
Strand.
No.
Mahoney.
Aye. Item D, the Gardenian addition at 6357 and 6395 27th Street South. Approval recommended by Planning Commission on 7/3/18. Zoning changing from agricultural to single dwelling residential. First reading of the rezoning ordinance and a plot of the Gardenian addition.
Good evening, Commissioners. Donald Kress from the Department of Planning and Development. I'll be presenting the next two items. Both of these items include an amended ordinance prepared by the City Attorney's Office. Item 37D is a zone change and plat for the Gardenia addition, located along 64th Avenue South at 27th Street. So it's this property here. There is an existing residence there. And then I-29 is off the map here to the west. The plat creates one block with 2 lots. So here's the block here, and here are the 2 lots. This Lot 2 is where the existing house is. Lot 1, there'll be a new house here. There's currently one detached house on the subject property, which was constructed in 1977, prior to this property being annexed in 2009. The plat also dedicates to the city 100 feet of right-of-way for 64th Avenue South, a negative access easement along the south line of the subdivision here will prevent access to and from 64th Avenue. Both lots will take access off 27th Street. The property is currently zoned agricultural, one of the few in-town ag zone properties we still have left. The proposed zone change is to SR2, a single-dwelling residential. This zone change is appropriate for the proposed development and is consistent with the 2007 growth plan land use designation for this property, which is medium or low to medium density residential. The applicant is platting and rezoning this property to enable him to build a new house on this property. This house will remain. He wants to build his new home here. The applicant, Robert Coast, is with us this evening. Thank you, Mr. Coast, and may wish to address the commission. Commissioners, the Planning Commission's recommendation is stated in your staff report and shown on the screen. This concludes staff's presentation. Thank you.
Is there anyone present who wishes to speak to this change? Is there anyone present who wishes to speak? We'll close the public hearing. Wasn't this a family that lived there at one time that had some difficulties because of the right-of-way and such?
Mayor, I don't know the
I think
actual
Brenda
history of
is.
this property.
Did we have some issues with this house before on specials? No? Nothing?
I believe that one was a little further to the east, sir.
To the east? Okay.
Yes,
thank
sir.
you.
That was my question. Does the requester understand the imminent nature of specials in this area of town if he develops and builds a new home on this
Mr.
lot?
Coast, do you have a?
There's a lot of front footage here, and it's going to be a bill.
You're aware of the rules?
Yep.
Yep, okay, thank you. We just like to make sure that people buying and moving and understand, because
Yes, sir.
later they'll make the front page that the specials came on and didn't recognize that was coming.
Yes,
So
sir.
that's what
And just so the commissioners know, part of our review in the subdivision, when we do review a subdivision, is have the applicant meet with Danny Eberhardt from Special Assessment Department and actually go over this with them, so they know upfront what the situation and the distribution of specials would be. That's part of our review for any subdivision.
Thank you. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Grinberg,
Aye.
Pepcorn.
Aye.
Strand.
Yes.
Mahoney.
Aye. Item E, text amendment to the amendment Articles 20.02 and 2007 and Article 2009 of the Fargo Municipal Code, Land Development Code, relating to correction of typos and errors, clarification of existing standards, building material requirements in the DMU zoning district, standards eligible for modification with PUD zoning district, setbacks and accessory structures, floor area for home occupation, processes for alternative access plans, and vehicle drive-through stacking spaces. Approval recommended by Planning Commission on 10/2/18, first reading of the ordinance. Donald Crest to explain as well.
Yes, sir. Commissioners, you may recall that at the October 8th City Commission meeting, we had a text amendment regarding building height. And at the time, I noted we have some additional text amendments coming your way shortly. Well, here they are. Item 37 is a group of text amendments, as the mayor has stated in the introduction. These amendments codify interpretations that are used by staff, so these are not dramatic new regulations or dramatic departures from things we've been doing. These are just codifying interpretations and clarifying some things, even if, as you look through those, through your staff report, doing simple things like getting the correct number of the footnote. There were a couple of things that were just apparently typographical errors, or making sure that sections are appropriately cross-referenced. And they cover a variety of topics. Again, as the mayor noted, these were initiated by staff. We always keep have in our heads and actually on paper things that we need to clarify as they come up through our review processes, and we just happen to have a short Planning Commission agenda here a couple months ago or last month, and we took that opportunity to get some of these coming forward. I was not intending to enumerate every one of those unless you'd really like me to, but we certainly answer whatever questions here commissioners would have. The Planning Commission's recommendation is stated in the staff report and shown on the screen, and this concludes staff's presentation. Thank you, commissioners.
Donald, did legal go through this as well, did you say?
Yes, sir. Mr. Johnson went through this with us rather thoroughly.
Fine tooth comb.
Thank you. Anyone present who wishes to speak to the new text amendment corrections? Anyone present who wishes to speak? If not, I'll close public hearing. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Strand first, Grinberg second. Roll call vote, please.
Strand,
Yes.
Grinberg.
Aye.
Pepcorn.
Aye.
Mahoney.
Aye.
Thank you, commissioners.
Recommendations for the policy of determination and review of stormwater service charges. Jody Bertram, I think you've explained this before, have you not?
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. This is our first time kind of bringing the policy and the resolution forward. What we've done previously is just had the brief presentation, kind of talked about the ordinance, which earlier tonight we had on the consent agenda for the second reading. So I'll just briefly go over kind of where we're at in the policy and what we've got remaining prior to implementation in beginning of 2019. So as everybody kind of knows, we had a flat rate, $3 and $15 based on water meters throughout the city to collect our stormwater fee. We now come forward with a new proposal to have a flat fee of $4 for residential, and any non-residential will be based on the impervious area or the hard surface and the total lot combined area with a minimum fee of $8. What we're really here today is to go ahead and talk about a seven-page document we put together in regards to the implementation of the policy. We worked with Nancy Morris and internal staff along with the A2S, and we came up with hopefully a baseline to go ahead and give us guidance to go ahead and actually determine what those service charges are going to be through the residential and the non-residential parcels throughout the city. As part of this document, we've actually kind of put a few things in here to go ahead and have internal review as we kind of roll this out for the first time. We're going to have some issues with the database, and people are going to come forward with things we couldn't find in the 40,000 different parcel entries we have. So based on that, we've kind of outlined how we're going to go ahead and handle the request for a reevaluation, which can do an internal one by city staff, just a quick parcel size and impervious to see if there was some glitch in the original database. And then we've also got some requests if people actually want to have adjustments to the actual structural drainage stuff that they have on site, which would give them a reduction in their fee. So that's briefly outlined in the policy along with some other special case determinations. So like I said, it's a 7-page document, pretty quick read, just breaks down how we're going to hopefully put the policy or the stormwater policy into action. Where we've been, we've kind of have the outreach we did on the past. We've covered those previously. We've had meetings, one-on-ones, major meetings at the library for the largely affected parcels. And most recently, last Tuesday, we had another public information meeting, which was outlined in our utility bill brochure that we sent out. That has another round. It goes out in November, kind of give some brief description of the policy and any
Jody, on the Tuesday 30th meeting, how many people attended?
we had 3 people, 1 couple and 1 other gentleman. So
Thank you.
we were able to give good news. One guy had $4 and the other people's rate actually went down. So we had nobody that was upset with us for one evening. We do have a comprehensive mailer going out later this week. That's the 4,000 parcels we have not charged previously. So we're kind of still fine combing that to make sure we don't have to send it out. But what we intend to do is anybody that has several parcels, let's say a developer, they got 40, 50 existing lots, we'll send them one cover page with all their lots they're going to be charged for, so we don't send out 40 of the exact same mailer to each
Can
of those.
you show that mailing to Commissioner Grinberg or Commissioner Pepcorn before it goes out so he can see it?
Yep, that's fine.
You'd probably want to see it if you're going to get all the phone calls.
Sure.
He's the liaison for engineers, so if anybody wants to know, that's the guy you call.
Thank you so much. If you want to give out my cell phone number, that'd be good too.
And I think kind of the last thing we've had AA2S kind of put together is we'll have a link on the city webpage, on the storm sewer page, and it's a brief example is here. You can kind of see that if you click on a specific parcel, it'll actually give you the area, what the percent impervious is and what the charge is, so you can actually pan around and kind of be nosy if you want, or you can find out whichever parcels you've got throughout the city. So that'll be available, like I said, after we get through this database refinement within the next, hopefully, week to 10 days. I guess I'll do that.
Questions of the commissioners?
Two
Mr. Bernard.
questions. Can you comment on discussions with the airport? Remind me, because I know there have been,
We've had numerous reports. We've actually kind of been working with Sean. Roger in our office has been out there numerous times, and we've kind of been actually working with them, because actually they were helpful right now. Over this last week, they're actually going through and cleaning up a lot of the addresses that might have been wrong for some of the leased property and stuff out there. So we intend to pretty much send the airport their bill separately from all the people they're leasing. So he's helping us out on that end.
and then West Acres.
West Acres, we're going to do at the parcel level, and again, we've got is it 15 different parcels I think we have included on a spreadsheet that we'll be sharing with the Mr. Schlossman out there.
Any other questions? Mr. Strand?
Thank you, Mayor. If we were to put this into a succinct little sentence, that this is why we're doing it, why is it we're doing this? I kind of have, I'd like to just have us preface this. The reason we're doing this is,
I guess no increases have happened since 2002, and we're deficient probably on the maintenance side of things that we're trying to keep, up to normal standards.
is it safe to assume that equity is also a factor in this formula going forward, that we're trying to find more equity in property types and uses?
Well, it more equally distributes the burden, I guess, of the fee onto the larger, more impervious parcels versus just, presently, I think over about half of our fee comes from just the residential side. Yes, I mean, there's still going to be a large portion of it, but there is,
Jody,
like I said,
if I was a taxpayer, I know you got a $120 million water plant, your wastewater, we're going to do $120 million. How big is the storm sewer enterprise?
I don't know, we got hundreds and hundreds of miles of pipe. I guess I've never put that number together, but I mean, you got.
Well, no, but a lot of people don't understand that, is that we need that, and we're protecting for a flood, but oftentimes rainfall is just as damaging to the community. So you have to have the capability of that. I think what Commissioner's trying to say, we're making the equity in the cost, so the residentials aren't being charged much, but commercial now is getting paid more of their share for large areas where it doesn't have runoff or areas to hold the water. But we have miles and miles of sewer, right?
Correct.
For storm
Yep,
sewer.
yep, along with the 80 lift stations and, that are integral to go ahead and either fight a flood or.
And over
do the
time, it's
return.
changed now. We do different things with storm sewer than we used to do in the past.
Correct. I mean, due to the fact of having the likelihood of the flooding that we had in 9, 11, 13, all those, we've now incorporated that the lift stations probably have a little bit larger capacity than they might have had in the past, along with, the isolation capabilities, I guess, for.
So we have the double whammy in this community. We're a flat area that has to protect for not only a flood, but also for rainwater or stormwater that we have to contribute. Your system now, which has taken over 3 years to develop or 4 years to develop, is what we feel is an equitable system to make everybody somewhat equal in the cost or the pain for taking care of this, right?
Correct. And it, with, depending on how special assessments roll out, but yeah, it's still.
So now
affords the
John would
city.
like you to just say one sentence that says that. Can you give that to me? I'll have John give it back to us.
Okay. You also, if I might, you alluded to it, but I'm sensing too that there will be some reductions in bills to some consumers.
Correct. There's very smaller parcels. I think I only took 5 phone calls, 1 email, and then a couple of people at the public hearings. I mean, that's what we received through the mailer, kind of letting them know of the meeting or questions, call here. It seems like it's been well-received for the increases we have. I mean, once the mailers go out in January, I guess that's when for the first billing, then we'll probably hear
Okay.
those comments.
Any other discussion? Can I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make the motion to approve, but I want to thank Jody. You did an excellent job, and I think the meeting with the largest customers that will be affected, that was excellent, and we made some changes because of those meetings. And I think, John, you asked about the question. One of the things is, in the past, especially when you think of flat parking lots, they have been paid zero. And the the water that runs off them, that's being paid by everybody else. I don't know if that makes sense, but I would say that's one of the things that this will address, is people that have large parking surfaces are going to have to start paying for part of the runoff. That's kind of a summary of that, so.
I want to say thanks, but I want to also shout out to Roger Cluck in our office. He's the one who's been doing a lot of the one-on-one meetings for NDSU and the airport and such, so.
Very good. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Again, thanks to your team. You've done a great job. Appreciate it. Roll call vote.
Pepcorn.
Aye.
Strand.
Yes.
Grinberg.
Aye.
Mahoney.
Aye. Consider cost participation maintenance agreement with North Dakota DOT for the 52nd Avenue South Construction Project, 45th.
We have 39 as well, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, I'm sorry. You have my recommendation, well, I have to go, yeah, I have my recommendation for the Native American Commission. I see Alexander Clinton is going off, John, so.
I will make the recommended motion for Anna Johnson, Mayor Mahoney.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call vote.
Strand.
Yes.
Pepcorn.
Aye.
Grinberg.
Aye.
Mahoney.
Aye. Say, we have the 5 flags starting to go up, John, for display in the City Hall, and we need 2 more, so if you just would remind Sharon Whitebeard, that we'd like to
It
have.
is Native American Month, isn't it?
5 nations, that'd be great. Item 16, costs, is that what it is, 16?
Now we're done on 40.
40. Oh, cost consideration participation maintenance agreement with the DOT, 45th to 63th Street South Improvement District, BN 19A. Brenda Daring to explain.
First, I'd like to apologize that we had to bring this up the last minute, but we are bidding this project on Friday through the North Dakota DOT. And so in front of you, you have a cost participation maintenance agreement with the North Dakota DOT. It's a standard agreement we have in relation to getting our urban road funds for the reconstruction of 52nd Avenue from 45th Street west to just west of 63rd Street. Oh.
Capital
And
improvement up.
the, what?
Go ahead.
Okay, and the motion for that is to move to approve. I don't know if you got the cover letter with that agreement. So there was a cover letter that was forwarded on, and that had a motion to approve the cost participation maintenance agreement.
Could you just back up a little bit and just tell them what that involves? How much money does the state give us for that cost participation, or what is it exactly that commissioners are approving?
So the 52nd Avenue project, it has a construction cost about $14.5 million. The urban roads will be contributing about $9.3 million. And then we also have some other resources for our funding. We have Southeast Cass Water Resource District. The Cass County Highway Department will be putting some funds, and then also West Fargo. So Southeast Cass will be putting in about $500,000. The Cass County Highway Department is about $1.4 million. West Fargo, about $200,000. And then we will have some special assessments also around $6.8 million.
Any questions of the commissioners? Can I have a motion?
I so move.
Is there a second?
Second.
And the reason we had to do it this way is because you have to get it in this Friday?
Correct.
Okay. Roll call vote.
Pepcorn.
Aye.
Grinberg.
Aye.
Strand.
Yes.
Mahoney.
Aye. Now we're to item 16, capital improvement plan, 2019. Brenda, to explain that as well.
Correct. Today, what we have is we wanted to bring our 2019 proposed capital improvement plan in front of you for receive and file. Give you some time to take a look at it. If you have any questions, comments, reach out to our department. We'd be happy to sit down with you, discuss any questions you have with it. And then probably in the next month or so, we would come back with a final capital improvement plan for you to approve. Just a couple of highlights is, as we had discussed, we did remove water main replacement projects for next year in regards to reverting back to the 2013 special assessment policy, so we did take those water main replacement projects off for next year. But even with those off, we still have a very healthy improvement plan for next year at about 80 million. And then also what we wanted to take a look at is just kind of showing you our last 3 years of capital improvement plans. And so what you see in front of you now is 2017, 2018, and our proposed 2019. So in 2017, we did about 102 million. 2018, we did about 125 million. And this year, we have about 80 million proposed. But when you take off that new development, which in the new development, it's just a dependent on the plating and the demand of those new lots. So when you take the new development out of all those historic years, 2017, we were about 74.5 million. Last year, we were at about 82 million on our capital improvement plan. And then this year, we're looking to be about 72 million.
Any questions? Mr. Strand?
Thank you. And this, I'm not sure this is for you, Brenda, or maybe for us to ponder, and maybe for Commissioner Grinberg and the Special Assessments Task Force, but I know one citizen out there that pays very close attention to specials. And on page 14, we're talking about traffic and streetlight projects, but his question to us has been, how do we assess for traffic lights, not streetlights, but the traffic management lights, and whether or not that assessment is in proper or not relative to benefits and how we determine benefits. So I'd just like us to look at that topic, if you haven't already, at the Special Assessments Task Force, so that I can give.
I think Ben has looked at it, John, and we could do that, bring it back
Just
to
like
you.
give
And
a
I
very
think
specific-
Eric may have looked at that as well. And I know your question, where it comes from, and I think it's been researched by our team. So we could bring that back to you.
And then also, as we reverted back to the 2013 policy, it is included within that project cost. So you have your capped costs, and then you also have that city funds coming into those arterials also now.
Yeah, just to add to Commissioner Strand, I didn't get a copy of this, so I'd like to get a copy.
Okay.
I'll give you this one. I have another one.
I mean, when things get pulled off the consent, they should automatically be brought copies so that we have it when we take it home. But to add to Commissioner Strand's point, the task force now is in the process of looking at and evaluating the various options after numerous meetings on education. But I think what, ties to this, and this would be a request for maybe 2 weeks from now, or a month, next 2 meetings, is more of a detailed presentation of the process that we use to determine that list. Because some of the discussion at the task force has been who makes the decisions to decide to go into that neighborhood and make that investment of 8 million, 10 million. And I think the process is something we're going to really look very closely at and change as far as what comes to us for approval versus what is actually required. There's the engineering team and what they do in their opinion, and then there's the reality of cost. And I know years ago, one of the points was made that annually 600-plus water main breaks were happening, and it's a no-brainer why the citizens passed the sales tax and we're doing reconstruction. But I think one of the underlying factors here is what comes to us and why, and what can be different, and it also adds to transparency and maybe a revamp of our notification process so that at the end of the day, moving beyond 19 into 2020 most likely, and if the Prairie Dog Fund passes, we're going to have a lot of different tools in our chest to be able to say, here's what we really did to drive down cost, and here's how we're financing in the future. Just more of a comment, I guess, than anything, but.
And that's really why we presented the CIP tonight, is for the commissioners to look at it, the public to look at it, and get some ideas about that. I think it's an excellent idea to show you why we choose these projects and which way we're headed, which direction we're headed. We're also a little bit waiting on your committee coming back to us if they're going to make some changes. There's those types of things. And part of it is you'll see the cities responding to continued growth. So the water main makes are down to 45 to 50 a year now. So we have really made a huge dent in that and continue to do well in that. But your counter question question would be, okay, now if we slow down, maybe water breaks will go up. So it's really a question of where we want to be as a city and where we go. So the engineering team could do that and present it. We've had some discussions in PUPEC about this, so
Correct.
probably have more knowledge of why the engineers chose it, but we can do that.
Well, and we can do a presentation in regards to our street rehab and why we pick the streets that we do for our mill and overlays, because we do have a whole system that we measure the quality of the roads, which is what determines what areas we're looking at to do our mill and overlays with. And we also understand that this is based on the current infrastructure funding policy, and if that changes, that's going to have to change this capital improvement plan also.
But I think part of the question is a lot of citizens wonder why we're where we're at today. They like the city of Fargo, they like our services and how we maintain our roads, snow removal, a variety of different things they really love about the city. If you're going to make a major shift in that, we need to make that understood. But I think part of what the commissioner wants to know is how are we here now? How are we making these decisions? Because we know at one time in the city of Fargo, we did very little maintenance of streets. We did very little money into infrastructure. Really wasn't where the mindset was at that time. But a long time now, we've been very committed to have good infrastructure in place and very solid city and very solid structure. So I think that's an excellent question that we could come back and kind of go through that.
Well, maybe what we'll do is we'll work to do maybe a presentation for in 2 weeks, and then give another 2 weeks to think about everything, and then come back for the final approval. And then what we will do also is, I wasn't aware, but we'll make sure that everyone gets copies of that preliminary report.
Any other questions? So tonight, is there a motion just to receive, or is that we just have for information, right?
Yep, it's just receive and file.
Any other questions? Item 19, 2019 parking rates recommended by the Parking Commission. Explanation by Mark Williams.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. At the regularly scheduled October Parking Commission meeting, we met, and Interstate Parking is a management company that we consult to manage our parking facilities. Made a recommendation of a parking increase, which is something we usually look at every year, and the Parking Commission voted to approve it. I've got Andy Renfrew here with Interstate Parking to be able to answer any detailed questions. If you have any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer them now.
I think Commissioner Pepcorn, you had this pulled.
No, and I appreciate that. I just wanted to have them give out information, and just kind of to summarize it, the newer parking ramps, we've increased the fee just a little bit. On most of the flat lots, we've kind of tried to keep those the same, and it's basically supply and demand. And the other thing is the ROCO, that ramp is beautiful. It's well lit, and there's cameras, and so that's where people want to park. And so that's a good thing. It's turned out better, and it's at capacity, and so that's a good thing. So that was. Thank you very much. Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, to add to that, we collect a lot of data, or Interstate Parking collects a lot of data on the usage, and really this recommendation is based on supply and demand. And it's just good practice to be able to look at our facilities and making sure we're keeping up. So a few years to go by and we realize that we're out of date, and then we have to do a large increase then.
Okay. Well, there was nothing here when I got here.
So I don't know if you have anything more to add, but that was my main thing. I just want, just to give you an update too, at our Parking Commission, we're looking, we're going to have some research done on whether we can add on to the civic ramp that's across from here. Ideally, we'd like to have, that's one of our, our fullest ramps, and so if we could add some more capacity, that'd be good. And we're also looking at another possible ramp similar to the ROCO somewhere in the downtown, and so that's kind of where we are right now. And I also want to compliment Interstate. They have done such a great job. They're very professional. The statistics and everything that they provide and the service they provide has been a great thing. I believe they've raised our level, and so it's been a good thing. Thank you for working with us.
Can I have a motion?
I'll move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
They should. If I can add one editorial comment, and this hopefully won't get us in too much hot water, but the bids for the airport parking, Interstate bid, they would have basically given us $500,000 more in 5 years, and they didn't get the bid. And so I'm the liaison with the airport authority, and my recommendation to the mayor would be, I believe we should accept that bid and reject the bid of the airport authority. It's $500,000. That's a lot of money. So that's, once again, that's my editorial comment, and I believe that might get us on a little bit of hot water. But,
Separate item, and we'll discuss that later. Thank you.
But I
Commissioner
will
Pepcorn.
say, they've done well by the city of Fargo interstate parking, and I believe they would do the same at the airport. That's the end of my sermon for tonight. Thank you.
Roll call vote, please.
Pepcorn.
Aye.
Grinberg.
Aye.
Strand.
Yes.
Mahoney.
Aye. Item 29, separation of improvement district BR 18A1 to complete reconstruction of Main Avenue to two projects, with the eastern portion BR 18A1 being bid in 3/9/19 and the western portion BR 19A1 to be bid in the fall of 2019. Brenda daring to explain again. You're getting older every time, huh?
It's amazing how that works.
And by the way, the mayor had my plan in his papers.
He took it. Anyway, I think we had talked to Commissioner Pepcorn earlier, and we just wanted to visit a little bit publicly on our decision to take Main Avenue. Originally, it was from 2nd Street through to University Drive. And as we've been looking at the different layouts and how that should look with how many lanes, and by the time that our consulting firm could get to actually getting to the point to design and get ready for construction of that project, we're looking at a bid date of March. And with that and all the work and the age of the infrastructure in there, most of the infrastructure, the sewer and water, is from the 1920s or earlier. And as we get into those types of roadways that have never been dug into, we know that we find additional items, and then also with the encroachments, we felt it was pertinent to maybe split those projects into two. We also reached out to the business owners and asked their opinions of how to look at those projects. By splitting it two, we can make an earlier completion date, which gives us some flexibility if we do run into any unexpected issues as we get into Main Avenue. So that gives us a little more flexibility also. We're looking at starting at 2nd Street and going through Broadway, and then that will open up Broadway, 4th Street, and 2nd Street, cross streets, while we go in between Broadway, west of Broadway to University. So I don't know if you have any other questions.
Mr. Chairman, real quickly, so Brenda, it's a lot of impact, especially for those small businesses along Main Avenue. And so you've been meeting with them, and I think, so it's going to totally close Main Avenue. And so that's a big deal. And I just, the other thing is, we have to make sure we do use all of our tools as far as an incentive for early completion, making sure that's the first project starting in the spring, those kinds of things, because this is going to have an impact. And they've been working on all these things, but I think splitting it in two, that's a great thing. It will help kind of find out what's there. I think that will help too, so.
Yeah, after we do the first phase, that will help give us more information for that second phase to the west.
Commissioner Strand.
Thank you, Mayor. And Commissioner Pepcorn, that leads me to my question. One of the requests of this project was, early on, was to look at the economic impact on the businesses. And then the discussions went every which way. Will this result in a 2-year delay or impact for Main Avenue? And will that be more deleterious to the businesses potentially? Or do we know, would they prefer it being consolidated to one bigger year so that they can get it done with in a year?
Jeremy Gordon and our project manager did meet with the businesses west of Broadway that front and talked to them about our options. We honestly, as the engineering department, would be very concerned that that could even get done in a year. And so we talked to them about some different options. And if you look at, if we go through Broadway the first year, we're not in front of them at all. And then that allows access to their businesses from the west. And then if we go in front of them the next year, that opens up the Broadway to the east. So then they have full access from the east. So they felt by not tearing up the whole stretch and splitting it in two gives them a little more proximity and contains that project a little bit more.
So a logistical question, where we had anticipated on Main Avenue creating a lane to go underneath the North University one-way there, just north of one. Will that be implemented through both phases of this, so that we are allowing people to circumvent Main for 2 years?
That will not be allowed in the first year.
That won't be in the first year.
And with that being added, there is, from my understanding with the conversations with the DOT, there's a lot more right-of-way that would be needed, which gives them more time to get those acquisitions completed.
My last question is, did we land on how many lanes on that east end of Broadway, and does it include the roundabout at Second Street?
The roundabout at Second Street and 3 lanes. 3 lanes.
3 lanes?
Yep. 3, 4, 5?
3. I know we have I think 3 lanes because we have left turn lanes at the intersections. So we're narrowing it down.
Are we okay then? 3, 4, 5 keeps the diaphragm alive. Boy Scouts can look that up, figure that out.
Do we need a motion for this?
Yes.
I'll make the motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Greenberg?
Aye.
Strand?
Yes.
Mahoney?
Aye.
I would just add, if I may, like I said, when we approved this project, this has to stand the test of time, and, 10 years from now, we're not going to come back and have a discussion to replat it, rebuild it, and make it different, much like Broadway has been in downtown over the years because of cost. But we all drive downtown, and we've got a vibrant, growing downtown, and it's not as easy as it used to be to get around downtown. And that's one of the things I think we're going to be very sensitive to with traffic patterns, timing, and we just commented with the Block 9 project and now this project. You might need a lesson with the community and patience to understand that, no longer can you get from A to Z in 45 seconds. It might take 6 minutes now because that's what.
There's detours and there's different things.
That's
that happen.
construction, but even with congestion and growth and cars and activity, it's a different time. And so I'm just appreciative of the design work we're doing, because laying for the future and not just, a project every 3 to 5 years, because demand has changed and we have to go in and spend another $10, $20 million. We got to get it right the first time.
Eric Johnson.
When we're done with this, I just wanted to ask one point of clarification, maybe with Shelley more than anything. It's regarding the Jody Bertrand's item 38.
Receive and file.
So I assume when, I think it was Commissioner Pepcorn that made the motion, it was, I think, so moved, which meant it would include both the policy approval and the resolution?
Yeah.
Okay,
Commissioner Strand.
thank you.
I think we should, the birthday patrol kicks in here, and when November 16th rolls around, we can be all wishing Commissioner Pepcorn a happy birthday.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Do you want to sing a song to you today?
I do not want to sing a song. I will move to adjourn.
On that note.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned. Thank you.